The assumptions that bind us. Rebecca Martin stood in her meticulously organized office, her gaze fixed on the city skyline through her large corner window. The glass reflected the tasteful, high-end decor of her workspace, an aura she had painstakingly cultivated over the years to match her status as one of the city's premier wedding planners. Everything here radiated sophistication, from the marble accents on the furniture to the carefully curated art pieces hanging on the walls. Rebecca prided herself on her high standards, both for herself and her clients. A faint smile tugged at her lips as she reviewed her latest achievements, projects for influential figures with substantial budgets and lavish tastes. That was her clientele, people who understood the value of refinement and exclusivity. Her events were more than weddings. They were social masterpieces, each a perfectly executed celebration of love, status, and beauty. Her attention shifted to the new file on her desk, lying there like a test she hadn't prepared for. The name Sarah Johnson was printed in plain font on a crisp white cover, devoid of the usual titles and family crests she often saw in her appointments. She glanced over the few details she had. There was nothing remarkable about the name, no suggestion of an elite family background, no clear indication of any high social status. This was, by her estimation, going to be another consultation with someone who wanted the world but wasn't willing, or able, to pay for it. With a sigh, she leaned back in her leather chair, her mind already beginning to build the outline of a polite yet firm way to navigate around their likely budget-friendly expectations. Her assistant Nancy interrupted her thoughts, a cheerful smile on her face as she announced, "Your 2 o'clock is here. She's a bit early." "Send her in," Rebecca replied, her tone cool but professional. She adjusted her blazer and straightened a few folders, readying herself for yet another meeting she already assumed would be unremarkable. When Sarah Johnson entered the office, she did so with a quiet confidence. There was a natural grace about her, despite her simple attire. A neat blouse, a pencil skirt, and soft, springy curls framing her face. Her smile was warm and genuine, not the polite, practiced smile of the elite, but one that radiated sincerity. Rebecca's eyes swept over her, quickly cataloging her as a woman with a taste for simplicity, an understatement that could easily clash with Rebecca's polished, grandeur-centered style. "Good afternoon, Ms. Johnson." Rebecca greeted her with a professional smile, her voice carefully measured. "Let's discuss your wedding vision." "Thank you for having me, Ms. Martin," Sarah replied, settling into the chair opposite Rebecca's desk with ease. "I've admired your work for years and am so excited to work with you. Michael and I want a meaningful celebration, nothing extravagant, but something truly personal and unique to us." Rebecca's mind immediately flagged the word meaningful as code for simple, something she generally regarded with suspicion. In her experience, simplicity was often just a polite way of saying low budget. Her face remained professionally composed, but a part of her bristled, feeling like her time and expertise were once again being undervalued. "Well, meaningful can mean many things," Rebecca said, her tone just a touch cool, her words chosen carefully to avoid outright disappointment. "Perhaps it would be best to discuss your budget first. That will help us determine what's feasible within the parameters you're envisioning." Sarah hesitated, her smile slipping only slightly, but her warmth remained. "Of course," she said gently. "We're not looking for anything grand, just something that reflects our journey together." Rebecca nodded, scribbling simple and minimalist in her notes. She kept her expression polite but non-committal, her mind racing to find ways to handle yet another wedding that would likely end up being more work than it was worth in terms of artistic and financial value. Still, she maintained her professionalism, listening with only enough focus to respond adequately, all the while anticipating the relief of the meeting's end. As the consultation wore on, Sarah shared stories about her relationship with Michael, recounting their journey with warmth and pride. Yet Rebecca's mind wandered, imagining the more glamorous appointments that lay ahead in her schedule. Her responses grew shorter, more distant, as she began to feel as though she was marking time, her interest waning by the minute. Just as Rebecca was about to wrap things up with an agreeable yet dismissive conclusion, there was a soft knock at the door. Nancy peeked in, nodding politely before stepping aside to let a man enter. Rebecca looked up, her eyes widening just slightly as she took in the new arrival. He was tall and composed, his presence commanding. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, he radiated a quiet authority that filled the room. His gaze was steady, penetrating, and when he saw Sarah, his expression softened, a small but meaningful smile tugging at his lips. He walked over to her and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture that seemed to reaffirm her presence. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said, his voice calm yet strong. He looked at Rebecca, his eyes assessing her with the same scrutiny she had often applied to her clients. It was a look she recognized well, one of silent judgment, not outwardly critical but undeniably observant. For the first time in the meeting, Rebecca found herself slightly off balance, realizing that this man, Sarah's fiancé, was no ordinary client. The air around him was unmistakably one of influence and experience, and the way he looked at her suggested he was someone accustomed to being respected, not placated or dismissed. "Michael," she acknowledged, her voice faltering slightly, betraying a hint of unease. "It's nice to meet you. We were just discussing some initial ideas for your wedding." Michael's expression remained cool but courteous as he sat down next to Sarah. "Yes, Sarah has told me quite a bit about your work," he said, his gaze steady. "We were looking forward to planning something meaningful with you." Rebecca's smile grew a touch more cautious, her earlier assumptions slowly unraveling in the face of his presence. "Of course," she replied, her tone softening as she tried to mask her initial judgments. "I'd be honored to help create something unique that reflects your story." But Michael didn't respond with immediate approval. Instead, his gaze lingered on her, thoughtful and scrutinizing, as if sensing the undercurrent of dismissiveness she had shown earlier. "We're not looking for an over-the-top affair," he said with quiet authority. "Just something that reflects who we are and what we believe in." Rebecca felt a flicker of discomfort. Her polished demeanor slipped, if only for a moment, as she processed the weight of his words. This couple wasn't just anyone. They were people with values, people who knew themselves deeply, and she hadn't even paused to consider them as individuals before dismissing their vision. The realization left her feeling unexpectedly vulnerable, caught in the act of her own unspoken biases. Clearing her throat, Rebecca forced herself to regroup. "Of course," she replied, adopting a more genuine tone. "I'm certain we can create something that balances simplicity with elegance, something that truly reflects who you both are." As she glanced between Michael and Sarah, she could see the beginnings of renewed trust in their eyes, though it was clear that trust was contingent on her actions moving forward. In Michael's gaze, she recognized a challenge, a test of her sincerity and willingness to work beyond her own preconceptions. When the couple finally left, Rebecca sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. This meeting had been different, unsettling even. It wasn't just her reputation on the line, but her integrity as well. She realized, for perhaps the first time, that she had a choice. She could continue as she always had, designing events for prestige and wealth, or she could step into the uncharted territory of creating something deeply personal for two people who valued meaning above all else. As the weight of the encounter settled on her, Rebecca found herself questioning the very image she had spent years building. Had she lost sight of what truly mattered in her pursuit of perfection? Unveiling new perspectives. In the days following her meeting with Sarah and Michael, Rebecca found herself haunted by their words and presence. Michael's quiet, steadfast authority had unsettled her, as had Sarah's warmth and genuineness, which Rebecca now realized she had dismissed far too quickly. She couldn't shake the memory of their request for a wedding that felt meaningful, something rooted in simplicity but rich in significance. It was a concept she'd never given much weight to before, so used to opulence and showmanship that she struggled to envision an event that wasn't defined by grandeur. Rebecca had always believed she was at the top of her game, catering to the elite, and designing weddings that were featured in high-profile magazines. She had achieved a level of success that many in her field only dreamed of. But now, sitting in her office, she questioned the depth of her accomplishments. Had she truly captured the essence of her clients, or had she been more concerned with crafting a spectacle to showcase her talents? Her assistant Nancy entered the room, snapping Rebecca from her thoughts. "Ms. Martin," Nancy began, her voice bright as always, "I wanted to go over the schedule for the next few consultations. But before that, I noticed you've been a bit distant. Everything all right?" Rebecca was taken aback by her assistant's perceptiveness. Nancy had been with her since the early days, when Rebecca had started her company with little more than ambition and a vision. They had weathered countless events together. And though Rebecca valued her professionalism, she had rarely opened up to her about personal matters. But this time, Nancy's concern felt genuine, even comforting. It's nothing," Rebecca replied, hesitating before continuing. "I had a consultation the other day that got me thinking. You know, about the way we approach things around here." Nancy's eyes widened slightly, clearly intrigued by Rebecca's unusual introspection. "Was it the Johnson wedding? I noticed you seemed a bit off after they left." Rebecca nodded, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edge of her desk. They weren't the typical clients we're used to. Their approach to their wedding was different. They don't want an extravagant affair. They want something personal, meaningful. Nancy tilted her head thoughtfully. "That sounds lovely. Sometimes the simpler events have a charm that the larger ones lack. They're more intimate, more honest." Rebecca was silent, digesting Nancy's words. Honest. That word struck a chord. Her past events had been impressive, certainly, but had they been honest? Had they captured the true essence of the couples they were meant to celebrate, or had they merely served as extensions of her own brand? She pushed those thoughts aside and turned her attention back to the couple's file, meticulously going over every detail they had shared during the meeting. She realized, much to her surprise, that despite her initial resistance, she wanted to give Sarah and Michael the wedding they envisioned. It was a challenge, yes, but it felt different, exciting, even. There was a sense of purpose behind it, one that she hadn't felt in a long time. Her usual clientele valued her ability to craft opulent, visually stunning events that radiated sophistication. But for the Johnsons, it wasn't about dazzling guests or making headlines. It was about creating a memory, one that would be deeply personal and unassuming, yet full of meaning. As Rebecca pondered their request, a memory surfaced from years before, when she was still a novice in the industry. She had once planned a wedding for a couple with limited means, but abundant love. It was held in a small garden, decorated with wildflowers. The bride had picked herself. The guests had gathered under string lights, the soft glow illuminating their laughter and tears. Rebecca remembered feeling an overwhelming sense of joy that night, watching the couple embrace as if the world existed solely for them in that moment. She hadn't thought about that wedding in years, but now, looking back, she realized it had been one of the most beautiful events she'd ever organized, not for its grandeur, but for its authenticity. With a newfound resolve, Rebecca decided to contact Sarah and Michael for a second meeting. She wanted to approach this project with a fresh perspective, one that would prioritize their vision over her own usual instincts. She picked up her phone, dialing the number Sarah had provided. "Hello." Sarah's voice was warm, instantly familiar. "Hello, Sarah. This is Rebecca Martin," she said, her tone softer than usual. "I was hoping we could schedule another meeting. I've been thinking about your vision for the wedding, and I'd like to discuss some new ideas with you." There was a pause on the line before Sarah replied, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "Of course, Ms. Martin. We'd love to meet again. Michael and I really appreciate your willingness to work with us on something that feels true to who we are." Rebecca felt a sense of relief as she scheduled the meeting. She was determined to listen to them more intently this time, to set aside her assumptions and focus solely on what they wanted. After hanging up, she sat back, realizing she felt a new sense of purpose, a sense of duty, even. A few days later, Sarah and Michael arrived for their second meeting. This time, Rebecca greeted them warmly, a genuine smile softening her usual businesslike demeanor. She guided them to the seating area by the window, a more relaxed and intimate space than the imposing desk she usually sat behind. She wanted them to feel comfortable, to sense that she was truly invested in their vision. "Thank you both for coming in again," Rebecca began, folding her hands in her lap. "I've given a lot of thought to what you shared with me last time. I realize I may not have fully understood your vision at first, but I'd like to try again, with an open mind." Sarah's face lit up, and Michael gave her a nod of acknowledgement, his expression one of quiet approval. Rebecca sensed he was still watching her closely, perhaps to see if her newfound sincerity would hold, but she felt a genuine shift within herself. This time, there were no pretenses, no judgments, just a desire to understand them. "I wanted to start by asking you both more about your story," Rebecca said, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "I'd love to know what has brought you to this point, and how you see your wedding as a reflection of that journey." Sarah exchanged a look with Michael, and then she began to speak, her voice full of warmth as she shared their story. They had met in college, where they bonded over a shared love of music and a passion for helping others. Both of them had grown up in modest households, with families who had taught them the value of hard work and humility. Over the years, they had faced numerous challenges, from job losses to family struggles, but each time, they had found strength in one another. Their love had been forged in resilience, and they saw their wedding as a celebration of that journey, a moment to honor the foundation they had built together. As Rebecca listened, she felt an unexpected lump in her throat. There was a depth to their story, a quiet beauty that resonated deeply with her. She realized that this wedding wasn't just about decor and aesthetics. It was a testament to a relationship that had weathered life's storms with grace and strength. She found herself captivated, genuinely moved by their journey. "Thank you for sharing that with me," she said softly, feeling a pang of regret for her initial judgments. "It's clear that your love is rooted in something truly meaningful. I'd be honored to create a wedding that reflects that." Michael's gaze softened, and he gave a slight nod. "We appreciate that, Rebecca. We don't need anything grand. We just want a space that feels like us, where our loved ones can gather and celebrate with us." Rebecca took a deep breath, her mind already racing with new ideas. This wouldn't be a typical wedding, but that was exactly what excited her. She began brainstorming aloud, suggesting a rustic, intimate setting with natural elements that would honor their love for simplicity. She envisioned a garden ceremony, surrounded by wildflowers and soft, earthy tones. Instead of elaborate centerpieces, she proposed handmade touches, a table adorned with family photographs, a guest book that allowed friends and family to share personal messages. Sarah's eyes sparkled as Rebecca described her ideas, her enthusiasm contagious. Michael listened thoughtfully, occasionally nodding his approval. Rebecca could feel the dynamic shift, a shared understanding settling between them. She was no longer the aloof planner simply executing an event. She was becoming a collaborator, someone invested in bringing their vision to life. As they wrapped up the meeting, Rebecca felt a profound sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in years. She knew that this wedding would be different from any she had planned before, but for the first time, she was embracing that difference. It was no longer about showcasing her skills or impressing others. It was about creating something beautiful, something that resonated with the couple in front of her. After they left, Rebecca sat back, feeling the weight of this transformation. She had crossed a threshold, shedding the armor of elitism and embracing a new perspective. She realized that her journey as a planner was evolving, moving away from status and spectacle and toward authenticity and connection. This wedding would not only be a celebration of Sarah and Michael's love, but a testament to Rebecca's own growth, her journey toward understanding the true meaning of her craft, crafting a vision of heart. The days following her second meeting with Sarah and Michael saw Rebecca transformed. Her heart had opened to a new way of thinking, and her mind now thrived with fresh ideas. The couple's vision had become an intricate part of her own, and she was driven to design a wedding that celebrated the authentic beauty of their love rather than the conventional trappings of luxury she was so accustomed to delivering. Rebecca sat alone in her office one evening, long after her staff had left for the day. The quiet allowed her to reflect deeply, not only on Sarah and Michael's story, but also on her own journey. She had built her career around crafting weddings that dazzled, events that made headlines, and graced the pages of the finest lifestyle magazines. Yet here she was, pondering a garden wedding with wildflowers and handmade decorations. It was an idea that, mere weeks ago, would have seemed too quaint, too pedestrian. But now, the simplicity felt powerful, even revolutionary. As she drafted the initial proposal, Rebecca's thoughts drifted back to her early years in the industry. She remembered the endless late nights, working tirelessly to build her brand from scratch. There had been times when she had doubted herself, wondering if she could make it in a field dominated by established players. Those early weddings were humble affairs, often on tight budgets, but they had taught her valuable lessons about resourcefulness and creativity. In those days, she hadn't had the luxury of lavish budgets or high-profile clients. She had to make magic out of ordinary things, finding beauty in simplicity. Somewhere along the way, as her reputation grew, she had left that part of herself behind. She had pursued bigger, more extravagant events, and in the process, she had lost touch with the purity of her work. Her success had given her a reputation for luxury, but in the pursuit of perfection, she had overlooked the heart of her craft. Now, with Sarah and Michael's wedding, she felt as though she was rediscovering something essential, something she had nearly forgotten. Rebecca spent the next few days immersed in research, poring over ideas for natural, intimate settings that would evoke a sense of warmth and unity. She envisioned a garden ceremony, a space surrounded by lush greenery and wildflowers, where the couple could exchange vows under an arch of vines and blossoms. She imagined guests seated on simple wooden benches, the ambience unpretentious yet deeply moving. The reception would be held outdoors as well, with long rustic tables draped in linen, lit by strings of warm lights hanging from the trees. She could see it all in her mind, a celebration not of wealth but of love and togetherness. The next step was to communicate this vision to Sarah and Michael. Rebecca knew she needed to do more than just describe the idea. She wanted them to feel it, to understand how deeply she had connected with their story. She set up a private consultation, preparing samples and sketches, even creating a small mood board to visually represent the atmosphere she had in mind. When Sarah and Michael arrived for the consultation, Rebecca could see a difference in their demeanor. There was a mutual trust between them now, a shared sense of purpose. Sarah's warm smile and Michael's steady, approving gaze made Rebecca feel as though she was on the right path. "I've prepared something special for you both," she began, gesturing to the mood board, and samples spread out on the table before them. She took a deep breath, hoping to convey her sincerity. "This wedding is unlike anything I've done before, and I want to make sure it reflects exactly who you are as a couple." She started with the ceremony setting, describing a secluded garden with natural, unfussy decor. She showed them a sketch of the floral arch she had designed, adorned with wildflowers that would look as though they had simply grown there, woven naturally into the landscape. The seating would be arranged in a semicircle, symbolizing unity and inclusivity, inviting guests to feel like they were part of the moment rather than just spectators. As Rebecca described the reception, she felt herself growing more animated. She talked about using long tables where guests could dine together in a family-style setting, with simple but elegant place settings and hand-picked flowers in mismatched vases. She showed them fabric samples for the table linens, soft, neutral tones that would complement the surrounding greenery without overshadowing it. Rebecca had even found a local artist to create custom napkin rings and name cards, small, personal touches that would make each guest feel truly welcome. Sarah's eyes sparkled as she examined the samples, and Michael leaned in, nodding thoughtfully. Rebecca could see that they were connecting with the vision, understanding that this wasn't just a wedding. It was a representation of everything they valued. It was a celebration of their journey, not a spectacle, but a gathering of loved ones brought together by love and respect. "There's one more element I'd like to propose," Rebecca added, her voice soft but confident. "I know you both value connection and family, so I thought we could create a memory wall. It would be a space where guests could pin photographs, write messages, and share their own memories with you. It would serve as a living tribute to the people who have been part of your journey." Sarah reached out, touching Rebecca's hand with gratitude. "That's beautiful," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Michael and I both come from families who taught us the importance of remembering where we come from. This would be perfect." Michael nodded, his expression one of genuine respect. "Rebecca, we appreciate how much thought you've put into this. We can tell this isn't just another project for you." Rebecca's heart swelled with pride and humility. In that moment, she realized she had found a new direction in her career, one that valued intimacy over extravagance, meaning over grandeur. This wedding was about more than her reputation. It was about honoring the lives of two people who had faced challenges and grown together, creating a space where they could celebrate their love surrounded by the people who mattered most to them. The weeks that followed were some of the most fulfilling of Rebecca's career. She worked closely with local artisans and small vendors, choosing materials and decorations that reflected the couple's values. She selected flowers that were locally sourced and sustainable, each bouquet unique and wild, in keeping with the natural theme. She even commissioned handmade candles from a nearby workshop, their gentle light intended to add a warm, intimate glow to the evening. Rebecca's team noticed the change in her approach. She was more involved, more connected, and her enthusiasm was contagious. Instead of directing from a distance, she was hands-on, spending time in the garden where the ceremony would take place, adjusting details until they felt just right. Her usual air of cool detachment had softened, replaced by a warmth and authenticity that inspired her staff to give their best as well. One afternoon, as she walked through the garden to finalize the layout for the ceremony, she felt an unexpected wave of emotion. This space, once simply a collection of ideas, had become a living, breathing representation of love and unity. For the first time in a long time, Rebecca felt as though she was creating something genuinely meaningful. This wedding wasn't about her or her brand. It was about two people and the love they shared. On the day of the wedding, Rebecca arrived early to oversee every last detail. She walked through the garden, checking the floral arch and seating arrangements, making sure that everything looked perfect yet unpretentious. She moved to the reception area, where tables were set with soft linens and mismatched vases filled with wildflowers. The memory wall stood at the center, a beautiful homage to the couple's journey, adorned with photographs, letters, and cherished mementos contributed by family and friends. As guests began to arrive, Rebecca watched from a distance, her heart swelling with pride as they marveled at the setting. Sarah and Michael had wanted something that felt like them, and as she observed the way the space resonated with the guests, she knew she had succeeded. The atmosphere was alive with warmth and authenticity, the laughter of family and friends mingling with the gentle strains of music. When the ceremony began, Rebecca found herself tearing up. She had attended countless weddings, but this one felt different, intimate in a way that touched her deeply. As Sarah and Michael exchanged vows under the floral arch, with their loved ones surrounding them in a circle of unity, Rebecca felt a profound sense of purpose. This wedding was a celebration of resilience, of love forged in trials and triumphs, and she was honored to have been a part of it. As the evening progressed, guests moved to the reception area, dining and laughing beneath the twinkling lights. The memory wall became a focal point, drawing people to share their memories, laughter, and tears. It was exactly as Rebecca had envisioned, a space alive with love and connection, a testament to the power of a wedding to bring people together. Toward the end of the night, Sarah and Michael approached Rebecca, their eyes filled with gratitude. "This was more than we ever could have hoped for," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've given us a gift that goes beyond anything we imagined." Rebecca smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. "Thank you for letting me be a part of it," she replied, feeling as though she, too, had been given a gift. A reminder of why she had fallen in love with this work in the first place. As she left that night, Rebecca knew she had found a new path in her career, one that honored not only the beauty of her craft, but the beauty of the love stories she was privileged to bring to life. The ripple of reflection. The wedding had been a beautiful success, and Rebecca found herself profoundly changed by the experience. She walked away from Sarah and Michael's celebration with a sense of fulfillment that went beyond anything she had ever felt in her career. Yet, as she returned to her routine, back in her meticulously organized office, she sensed the quiet pull of a new direction calling to her. The event had not only altered her perspective on her craft, but had also illuminated parts of herself that she had forgotten in the pursuit of acclaim. The following morning, Rebecca arrived early at her office, eager to take on her day with fresh eyes. Her team was bustling with activity, preparing for the upcoming weddings on the calendar. She usually started her mornings with a detailed briefing, dictating tasks and overseeing progress with her characteristic precision, but today she took a different approach. She gathered her staff in the conference room, sensing that they, too, might have noticed the transformation in her work ethic and passion. As they settled in, her assistant Nancy gave her a curious glance, sensing something was different. "I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the wedding we just completed," Rebecca began, a hint of softness in her voice that surprised even herself. "The Johnson wedding wasn't our usual affair, but it was, I believe, one of the most meaningful events we've ever created." There were nods and murmurs of agreement around the table. Many of her team members had been deeply moved by the wedding, captivated by its simplicity and authenticity. The lack of extravagant decor and grandeur had allowed them to focus on what truly mattered: the love between two people and the community gathered to support them. It had been an experience that had left a mark on everyone involved. Rebecca took a deep breath, her heart racing slightly as she prepared to share something personal, something she usually kept guarded. "I'll be honest with you all," she continued. "When Sarah and Michael first came to us, I was reluctant. I didn't think their vision aligned with what we're known for. But over the course of planning their wedding, I realized that my priorities had been misplaced. I had become so focused on perfection and prestige that I had lost sight of the heart of what we do." Her staff listened attentively, their faces reflecting a mix of surprise and admiration. They had always known Rebecca as a driven, ambitious woman with uncompromising standards, but this level of vulnerability was new. "The Johnson wedding reminded me of why I fell in love with this business," she said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "It's not just about creating beautiful events. It's about telling people's stories, about honoring the relationships that shape their lives. I want us to focus more on that going forward." Her words hung in the air, a quiet but powerful statement that marked a shift not just for her but for the entire team. She could see the enthusiasm in their eyes, the renewed sense of purpose that mirrored her own. Her assistant Nancy, always perceptive, gave her a smile of encouragement, silently conveying her support. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca began to implement small but meaningful changes in her business. She took on fewer clients, focusing on those who sought depth and authenticity over glamour and extravagance. She worked more closely with her team, inviting them to contribute ideas and perspectives rather than simply executing her vision. She wanted her staff to feel as invested in each wedding as she did, to see each event as an opportunity to create something meaningful. One afternoon, as she was finalizing details for an upcoming wedding, her phone rang. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number, but something compelled her to answer. "Hello, Rebecca Martin speaking," she answered, her tone professional. "Ms. Martin, my name is Angela Thompson." The woman on the other end began. "I was a guest at Sarah and Michael's wedding. I wanted to thank you personally for what you created. It was one of the most beautiful, heartfelt weddings I've ever attended." Rebecca smiled, a sense of warmth spreading through her. Thank you, Angela. It was an honor to be a part of that celebration. Sarah and Michael are truly remarkable. They are, Angela agreed, her voice filled with admiration. I'm calling because my daughter is getting married next spring, and she was moved by the intimacy and authenticity of Sarah and Michael's wedding. We would love to work with you to create something similar, something that feels like a genuine reflection of her relationship. Rebecca felt a thrill of excitement at the opportunity. This was exactly the kind of project she wanted to take on, a wedding rooted in sincerity rather than spectacle. I would be delighted to meet with you and your daughter to discuss her vision, she replied warmly. I've recently shifted my approach to focus on creating events that are more personal and meaningful. Angela let out a breath of relief. Thank you, Ms. Martin. We'll be in touch soon to set up a consultation. My daughter will be thrilled. After hanging up, Rebecca sat back in her chair, marveling at how much had changed in such a short time. This was the second inquiry she had received from a guest at Sarah and Michael's wedding, and she felt a sense of validation that her new approach was resonating with people. She had once feared that stepping away from luxury events would hurt her business, but instead, she was finding a new niche, one that was deeply rewarding and personally fulfilling. Rebecca's transformation extended beyond her work. She found herself reflecting on her personal life, examining the relationships and connections she had long taken for granted. She realized that, like her career, she had been so focused on success and appearances that she had neglected the people who truly mattered to her. She decided to reconnect with old friends, reaching out to those she had lost touch with over the years. She even invited her parents for a weekend visit, an act that, while small, was a significant step toward mending a relationship that had grown distant. One evening, as she sat with her parents in her home, sharing stories and laughter over a simple meal, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her mother noticed the change in her, commenting on how much lighter she seemed, how much more present. Rebecca didn't explain the transformation in detail, but she felt grateful for the wedding that had prompted her to reevaluate her life. As her business evolved, Rebecca took pleasure in the details of each project, finding joy in the stories behind each couple. She approached each wedding with a sense of respect, treating every detail as a reflection of the couple's unique journey. She found herself spending more time with her clients, listening to their stories, learning about their dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. In doing so, she forged deeper connections, creating not just beautiful events but experiences that resonated with meaning. One day, as she was reviewing a design concept with her team, Nancy entered her office with an envelope in hand. "This came for you," she said, handing it over with a knowing smile. Rebecca opened the envelope to find a handwritten note from Sarah and Michael. Inside was a photograph from their wedding, a candid shot of the two of them laughing beneath the floral arch, surrounded by their friends and family. In the note, Sarah had written, "Dear Rebecca, thank you for giving us a wedding that felt like home. It was everything we dreamed of and more, and it wouldn't have been possible without your open heart and dedication. You didn't just plan our wedding, you understood it. We will always cherish that day, and we're grateful to have shared it with someone who truly cared. With all our love and gratitude, Sarah and Michael." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears as she read the note, feeling a surge of emotion that went beyond pride. It was gratitude, pure and profound. Sarah and Michael's wedding had changed her life in ways she hadn't anticipated, opening her heart to new possibilities and reminding her of the importance of love, connection, and authenticity. She placed the photo on her desk, a reminder of the journey she had embarked upon, both professionally and personally. The image of Sarah and Michael, bathed in sunlight and surrounded by loved ones, became a symbol of the new path she had chosen, a path that valued depth and meaning over superficial beauty. From that day forward, Rebecca redefined her business. She no longer saw herself as merely a wedding planner. She was a storyteller, a curator of memories. Her events became known for their intimacy and uniqueness, each one a reflection of the couple's journey rather than a display of wealth or prestige. In time, her reputation grew, not for luxury but for authenticity. She became a sought-after planner for couples who wanted something different, something real. She was invited to speak at industry events, where she shared her journey and encouraged others to embrace the heart of their work. Rebecca knew that Sarah and Michael's wedding would forever be a turning point in her life, a moment when she had chosen to honor her true values. As she looked to the future, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet but powerful resolve to continue crafting events that celebrated love in its truest form. And as each new couple came to her with their dreams, Rebecca welcomed them with an open heart, ready to help them create not just a wedding, but a legacy of love and meaning. Embracing legacy and love. Months had passed since Sarah and Michael's wedding, but its impact on Rebecca continued to ripple through her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her entire business model had shifted, moving away from grand displays and focusing instead on the profound stories of each couple who entrusted her with their big day. Clients were now drawn to her for her ability to listen deeply, to capture not just aesthetics, but the essence of their love. Her events, once known for their opulence, were now celebrated for their warmth, intimacy, and authenticity, a reputation that Rebecca held dear, as it felt truer to who she had become. Rebecca's calendar was booked months in advance, not with the high society names she used to covet, but with couples from all walks of life. Each story was different, and she found herself inspired by the diversity of experiences and backgrounds they shared with her. One of her most memorable clients was a young couple who wanted a ceremony that honored their mixed cultural heritage. Rebecca dove into the project with the same enthusiasm and curiosity that had fueled her since the Johnson wedding, immersing herself in the details of their customs, traditions, and family histories. The result was a celebration that wove together their cultural roots into a cohesive, heartfelt ceremony that moved every guest to tears. Rebecca's newfound dedication also drew the attention of her peers. She was frequently invited to speak at industry conferences, where she openly shared her journey and the lessons she had learned about the power of authentic storytelling. She encouraged others in the wedding industry to look beyond appearances, to see each event as an opportunity to create a meaningful experience rather than just a display. Her vulnerability and honesty resonated with audiences, sparking conversations about the importance of genuine connection in a field often dominated by aesthetics and status. One of her speaking engagements took her to a prestigious industry summit in California. Rebecca was nervous, unsure of how her new perspective would be received by an audience that included some of the most influential figures in the wedding business. She had once idolized these people, measuring her success by their standards, but now she wondered if she had outgrown the values that had once defined her career. As she took the stage, she steadied herself, reminded of the journey that had brought her to this moment. She began her talk by recounting the story of Sarah and Michael's wedding, sharing how it had transformed her perspective on love, connection, and the purpose of her work. She spoke about her shift from creating events for spectacle to designing experiences that captured the heart and soul of each couple. As she spoke, she noticed the faces in the audience softening, many of them nodding in quiet agreement. Some even appeared moved, clearly touched by the authenticity of her message. When she finished, the room erupted into applause, and several attendees approached her with words of gratitude and admiration. One young planner, just starting out in her career, tearfully thanked Rebecca for showing her a path that valued meaning over grandeur. "You've given me the courage to follow my heart," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Rebecca felt a surge of pride and humility, grateful that her journey could inspire others to seek fulfillment beyond the superficial. It was during this event that she was approached by a man named Alan Sinclair, a well-known figure in the wedding industry. Alan was known for his high-end events and glamorous clientele, and Rebecca had once considered him a rival of sorts, even as she had admired his work from afar. His events were lavish, unforgettable spectacles, but standing before her now, he looked contemplative, even vulnerable. "Rebecca, your talk was inspiring," he began, his voice thoughtful. "I've been in this business for decades and I've seen trends come and go, but I've never heard anyone talk about weddings the way you just did. You reminded me of something I think I'd lost a long time ago. Rebecca looked at him, surprised and touched. Thank you, Alan. It means a lot coming from you. He nodded, his gaze drifting as if lost in thought. I think I'd like to try what you're doing. To create events that feel real. I don't know if I even remember how, but listening to you made me want to reconnect with that part of myself. Rebecca smiled, feeling an unexpected sense of kinship with him. It's never too late to start again. For me, it took one wedding, one couple, to change everything. Maybe you just need to find that couple who reminds you why you started in the first place. Alan's expression softened, and he nodded. Thank you, Rebecca. Maybe it's time I look beyond the spectacle. As the summit concluded, Rebecca returned home with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep satisfaction that went beyond professional accolades. She had planted a seed of change within her industry, one that she hoped would inspire others to look for meaning and connection in their work. Her journey had come full circle, from a planner obsessed with status to a storyteller invested in love. Several weeks later, Rebecca received a letter in the mail. The return address caught her eye. It was from a law firm representing the estate of a former client, a woman named Margaret Whitmore. Rebecca had organized Margaret's wedding years ago, back when she was still striving to make a name for herself. The wedding had been a grand affair, filled with luxury and opulence, exactly the kind of event Rebecca had once prided herself on. She opened the letter, curious and slightly apprehensive. To her surprise, it contained a handwritten note from Margaret, along with a request. Margaret had recently passed away after a long illness, but in her final days, she had instructed her lawyer to reach out to Rebecca with a special request for her daughter's wedding. Rebecca, the note began, the elegant script a reflection of Margaret's refined taste. I have watched your journey over the years, and I have seen the changes you have made in your approach to weddings. It brings me great comfort to know that someone like you, who understands the importance of love and legacy, will be there for my daughter on her special day. I want her wedding to reflect not just the grandeur of our family, but the joy and resilience that has carried us through generations. Please help her create something beautiful, something real. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes as she read the note. Margaret had been a woman of status, her wedding a meticulously orchestrated display of wealth and elegance. Yet, in her final message, she had asked for something deeper for her daughter, something that went beyond appearances. Rebecca felt honored to fulfill this request, knowing that her work now held a gravity and purpose she hadn't fully understood before. Margaret's daughter, Amelia, arrived at Rebecca's office the following week for their initial consultation. She was a young woman with a gentle demeanor, her eyes reflecting both grief and a quiet strength. As she settled into the chair across from Rebecca, she took a deep breath, gathering herself. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice soft but steady. "My mother spoke highly of you, and I know she trusted you. I want my wedding to honor her memory, but I don't want it to be just a tribute. I want it to be a celebration of love and family." Rebecca reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Amelia's. "Your mother was an extraordinary woman, Amelia. She wanted this day to be about more than tradition and expectations. She wanted it to reflect the strength and love that define your family." Amelia's face softened, a small, grateful smile breaking through her initial reserve. "That's exactly what I want. My fiancé and I are both fairly private, and we want the wedding to be intimate, something that feels like home." As Rebecca listened, she felt a familiar excitement bubbling within her. Amelia's vision was simple yet profound, a true reflection of the love that had shaped her life. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca poured herself into the planning, collaborating with Amelia to create a wedding that would honor her mother's legacy while celebrating the love she had found with her fiancé. They chose a small, historic chapel surrounded by lush gardens as the ceremony site, a place that echoed with the memories of countless unions before them. The decor was elegant but understated, with soft, neutral colors and delicate floral arrangements that Amelia's mother had loved. In place of a traditional reception hall, They chose an old family estate, its grounds transformed into an intimate gathering space where friends and family could dine together under the open sky, surrounded by the warmth of candlelight and laughter. On the day of the wedding, Rebecca watched from a distance as Amelia walked down the aisle, her expression one of quiet joy. She was radiant, embodying not just the grace of her mother, but the strength of her own spirit. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt moments, with loved ones sharing stories of Margaret's legacy, weaving her presence into the celebration. By the time the reception began, the atmosphere was one of love, unity, and remembrance, exactly as Amelia had hoped. As the night wound down, Amelia found Rebecca, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "Thank you, Rebecca," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This day was perfect. I felt my mother with me, and I know she would have loved everything." Rebecca smiled, feeling the weight of Margaret's letter in her heart. "It was an honor to be a part of this, Amelia. Your mother's spirit was here tonight, in every detail, every moment." As she walked away from the estate that night, Rebecca felt a profound sense of peace. She knew that her work was no longer just about creating beautiful events. It was about honoring legacies, celebrating love, and crafting memories that would endure in the hearts of those who mattered most. Rebecca's life had become a tapestry woven from the stories of others, each thread a testament to the power of love, family, and connection. She knew now that her journey was one of legacy, not just her own, but of all those she was privileged to serve, each wedding a chapter in a story that would be remembered long after the last candle had flickered out. Full circle, the heart of the journey. Rebecca's career continued to blossom, each new wedding bringing its own story, its own unique challenges, and each one resonating with the purpose she had found within herself. The transformation that had begun with Sarah and Michael's wedding had now become her life's work. Her business, once characterized by its reputation for opulence, was now known as a sanctuary for couples seeking authenticity. She had found her calling, a path that was as much about connection and understanding as it was about event planning. The months turned into years, and Rebecca became a cherished figure in her community. She was invited to host workshops, where she taught budding wedding planners not only the logistics of the industry, but also the importance of empathy and the art of listening. She emphasized that every wedding was a reflection of love and commitment, not a platform for spectacle. Her workshops were intimate, more like conversations, where she shared stories from her journey and encouraged her students to seek meaning over grandeur. She watched with pride as these young planners embraced her philosophy, each one carrying forward a piece of her legacy into their own careers. One crisp autumn day, Rebecca received an unexpected invitation in the mail. It was from a local art center, asking her to consider speaking at a new series they were hosting, Love Stories Through the Lens. The series aimed to showcase various creative perspectives on love, from photography to poetry, and they wanted Rebecca to share her experiences as a wedding planner. Intrigued by the idea, she agreed, feeling honored that her work was being seen as a form of art. On the day of the event, she walked into the small theater, its seats filled with people of all ages, young couples, aspiring planners, and those simply curious about the stories behind the wedding she had crafted. As she took the stage, she felt a familiar wave of nerves, tempered by the calm resolve that had become her guiding force. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but warm. "For many years, I thought I knew what it meant to plan a wedding. I believed it was about creating beauty, about making a statement. But along the way, I discovered something deeper. I learned that a wedding is not just an event. It's a memory, a legacy that lives on in the hearts of those who are part of it." She told them about Sarah and Michael, sharing how their simple request for meaning had shifted her entire approach. She spoke about the power of vulnerability and connection, about the beauty of love unadorned by excess. She shared stories of couples who had come to her with nothing but a desire to celebrate each other, and how those celebrations, grounded in honesty, had left the deepest impact. When she finished, there was a profound silence in the room, a stillness that spoke to the hearts she had touched. After a moment, the audience erupted in applause, and as Rebecca stepped off the stage, she was greeted by people eager to share their own stories, to ask her questions, to thank her for showing them a new way to think about weddings and love. That evening, Rebecca returned to her home, her heart full yet tinged with a quiet sense of nostalgia. Her journey had been long and winding, filled with moments of self-discovery and growth, and now she felt the gentle pull of something even deeper, a desire to leave behind a legacy that would endure beyond her career. A few weeks later, this feeling crystallized into an idea. Rebecca decided to create a foundation, one dedicated to helping couples who couldn't afford traditional weddings, but who deserved a meaningful celebration. She wanted to offer her services to those who had overcome hardships, those whose love had been tested by life's challenges, and emerged stronger. This foundation would be her way of giving back, of using her skills to serve a higher purpose. She named the foundation Hearts United, and its mission was simple yet profound: to create intimate, meaningful weddings for couples who couldn't afford the luxury of a traditional celebration. She reached out to vendors she had worked with over the years, many of whom were deeply moved by her mission and eager to volunteer their services. Florists, photographers, musicians, and caterers all offered their support, creating a network of compassionate professionals ready to bring joy to couples who had never dared to dream of such a day. The foundation's first wedding was for a couple named Rosa and Javier, who had met as teenagers and had been together for nearly 20 years. They had raised 3 children, weathered financial struggles, and faced health challenges, yet their love had only deepened. They had always wanted to get married, but had never been able to afford even a modest ceremony. When they heard about Hearts United, they applied, though they hardly dared to hope. Rebecca selected them personally, moved by their story of resilience and devotion. She met with Rosa and Javier in a local cafe, where they shared stories of their life together, the sacrifices they had made, and the simple joys they found in each other's company. Rebecca was captivated by their bond, their quiet strength, and the way they looked at each other as if they were still those same young kids who had fallen in love decades ago. The wedding was held in a small rustic barn decorated with soft lights and wildflowers, reminiscent of the simplicity that Rebecca had come to cherish. Rosa wore a modest dress, her eyes shining with happiness as she walked down the aisle toward Javier, who stood waiting, his expression one of awe and pride. Their children were their attendants, each one smiling through tears as they watched their parents finally exchange vows. The ceremony was filled with laughter and love, every moment a testament to the life they had built together. As she watched them, Rebecca felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. This was the essence of her work, the heart of her journey, to create spaces where love could be honored, where people could gather to celebrate not wealth or status, but connection, resilience, and commitment. Hearts United quickly gained attention in the community, with news spreading about Rebecca's mission to make weddings accessible to those who had faced adversity. Each story brought its own challenges, its own joys, and each one deepened Rebecca's understanding of love. She saw how it could flourish in the most unexpected places, how it could survive hardship, and how it could bring light even in the darkest of times. The foundation became a central part of her life, and with each wedding she planned through Hearts United, Rebecca felt a sense of peace, as if she were weaving a legacy that would outlast her own lifetime. She worked with families who had been separated by immigration, with couples who had survived illness and loss, with people who had found love after unimaginable grief. Each wedding was a tribute to resilience, a reminder that love could triumph even in the face of life's greatest challenges. One evening, after another beautiful Hearts United wedding, Rebecca received an unexpected visitor. It was Sarah and Michael, the couple whose wedding had changed everything for her. They had heard about the foundation and wanted to thank her for the impact she had made. They brought with them a gift, a framed photograph from their wedding, a candid shot of Rebecca standing with them, her expression one of quiet joy. "We wanted you to have this," Sarah said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You gave us more than a wedding. Rebecca, you gave us a legacy. And now you're giving that gift to so many others. Rebecca accepted the photograph with a full heart, deeply moved by the gesture. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. It was because of you two that I found my way. You showed me what really matters. Michael nodded, his eyes warm. We always knew you were meant for something extraordinary, Rebecca, and it's beautiful to see what you've created. As they left, Rebecca placed the photograph on her desk, a reminder of the moment her life had shifted, of the couple who had opened her heart to a new way of seeing. She knew that Sarah and Michael's story would forever be a part of her journey, a reminder of the legacy she was building through Hearts United. In the years that followed, Rebecca's foundation continued to grow, touching the lives of countless couples who had thought a wedding was beyond their reach. She trained other planners to carry on the work, creating a network of compassionate professionals dedicated to the same mission. Her reputation became one of kindness, empathy, and unwavering dedication to love in all its forms. As she looked back on her journey, Rebecca felt a profound sense of peace. She had once been a planner chasing prestige, but she had found her true purpose in serving others. She had created not just beautiful events but meaningful legacies, each wedding a chapter in the story of love that had become her life's work. One evening, as she sat in her garden watching the sun dip below the horizon, Rebecca realized she had come full circle. She was no longer just a wedding planner. She was a witness to love, a curator of stories, a guardian of memories that would live on long after her work was done. And as the stars began to fill the sky, Rebecca felt a quiet joy, knowing that her legacy would continue, carried forward by the lives she had touched and the love she had helped to celebrate.